Financial Times exposes the fact that Biden has no idea what's going on in the oil industry as he continues to try to blame the oil industry for what's happening at the fuel pump. So we'll talk just a bit about what's happening with that. Day 2 of the January 6th circus is here, and now Merrick Garland is coming out and saying, oh yeah, no, I'm watching this eagerly. I'm going to see what happens, and we might have to refer people for criminal charges. So we'll talk just a bit about that, what that means, and where we go from there. Scott Wiener comes out to complain about the fact that the Proud Boys stormed a drag queen story hour. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. Sorry, dudes. The Proud Boys glow. And Elon Musk calls out Twitter over repeated death threats to a popular Twitter account that just happens to be conservative. It is going to be all this and more. Welcome to midterm season. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, Ed Heads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and we have got a, fairly good stack today. I didn't think it was going to be this stacked up when I went to bed last night, but I found a bunch of stuff over here once I started looking through some of the stuff that happened overnight and a few other things. The Libs of TikTok thing, I don't know. And people are just spouting off their hate. I mean, you look at this and you see where this goes. Now, I know that there were plenty of people who called for Barack's head. I know that there were plenty of people out there who wanted something bad to happen to him. I'm sure there are plenty of people who have said something similarly horrifying about Biden. Whether or not that person glows in the dark, I don't know. But just the fact that people are getting threatened by a pipe bomb and somebody says, oh, well, you can dish it out and you can't take it. And then you press a little bit and you find out that the dude, I didn't know that she was threatened with a pipe bomb. But can you be surprised in this day and age? That kind of stuff. So we're going to go through all that. We got to get through a lot of finance stuff here today. Yesterday was a hell of a day on the finance side, so we're going to get right down to it. But before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great shows such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The Already Conservative, and The Porch Boys. Go check out all those shows. We had Wyatt in. We did a video game stream last night. A little bit of Fallout 4. That was pretty cool. We had actually a bunch of people showed up for that. So a lot of lurkers. Not a lot of people were in here in there chatting, but a lot of lurkers last night. So I do think people are prepared and ready to have me on for a Monday night stream. So definitely go and check that out. If you want to go see the VOD, we didn't do it on YouTube, but Twitch has the video on demand up, and so does DLive, so you can go back and go check out what we did. We got all the way across around Washington, D.C., and went to the Point Lookout DLC in Fallout 3. So we'll be going through that. When we get back, we'll probably run back out and take on the Operation Anchorage one, but hopefully, we won't be crashing through Point Lookout in one single session either. I still can't believe we did that with the pit. All right, we got to get down into it, though, because we got a lot. And just because of some of the stuff that had to get added today, we are running a little bit behind. So let's get started. Starting with your finance and the Dow. The Dow got a new 52-week low yesterday, down to 30,373.72. I thought it was going for under 30,000. I thought it was going to dump off that far at some point, but it rebounded just slightly at the end of the day, and, you know, it was kind of juggling around too, but we ended the day yesterday at 30,516.74. Now, as it looks like right now, the futures are up ever so slightly. I think it was 95 points on the Dow the last time I looked, was where the futures were at. So it's struggling. Will we see another day like yesterday today? I have no idea. It's a probable. It is not outside the realm of possibility. That much I can say. Which would bring us down to the 27,000 mark. That inflation is a killer, and I mean, the investors like you and me don't want to be in on this market. Now, the government investors that are doing this mostly on government loan, they're going to hold this up for a little while, but there's going to come to a point where people aren't going to know if they can hang on to this yet. So we'll continue to watch this and see where this goes. Looking in at the Bitcoin. The Bitcoin is at 21,870 US dollars and 90 US cents. And look at that 5-day curve. And it got even lower. It got down, I believe it got down below 21,000. Yep, 20,834.70 per coin at one point yesterday. It has bounced back once again. And I'm already looking at Coinbase and saying, what's going to be the line and where am I going to buy the dip? I think at 17 is where I'm going to go and buy the dip. I think that's going to be the point where I'm going to say, yeah, this is going to be where I want it to be. So that is, of course, not official financial advice, especially considering that over the past 5 days, the Bitcoin has lost 8,208 US dollars and 70 US cents per coin. It has lost a quarter of its value and then some. So that's not official financial advice, but it's something to look at. It's something to see, and it's something to make your decision as to whether or not this is something you want to be involved in or something you want to walk away from. So that's what we see coming off of that. Looking at the gas. Well, it's holding steady from what we saw yesterday. 461 are the low price leaders over in the Sun Prairie area. Otherwise going up to 464 as we get into Madison proper, and 465 in DeForest. So steady is the way to go right now. Now, with the holiday weekend coming up again in just a couple weeks, I question whether or not that can stay in those 460 ranges, or if we're going to see another 50-cent jump almost immediately after the 4th of July weekend goes. Crossing my fingers and saying I hope not, because I do intend to be traveling that weekend, but that is what we see coming off of that. Let's see what IBD has to say. And we do have a couple more. Well, I guess we're not going to be seeing what IBD has to say for the morning. They baited and switched me. All right, let's see what Fox Business has to say. Stock sink. S&P enters a bear market inflation. Fed meeting this week. Live updates. Oh, this is a live updater too. Man, am I prepared this morning. Man, oh man, oh man, am I... All right. Anyway, I guess let's look in at some of the other financial news, and we'll go back and look at some of... we'll look at IBD a little bit, but yeah, let's look at some of this other financial news once this gets done archiving. All right, California drivers elated after gas station glitch has fuel at 69 cents per gallon. From Tim Meads. Sometimes good fortune comes down to being in the right place at the right time. For Daryl Sarita, that meant being at the Shell gas station in Rancho Cordova, California last Thursday when a price glitch allowed him to fill up his tank of gas for just 69 cents per gallon. I looked at the numbers and it was 69 cents a gallon. So you know what I did? I hit that button and I started pumping and the dollar sign just stayed low, Sarita exclaimed. CBS Sacramento reported. Sarita posted the incredible discovery on Instagram and notified his family and friends. Soon, many more vehicles were at the Shell station filling up their cars for the low, low price. I started looking around and everyone had a smile. Everyone had a big smile and they were not looking at you in your eyes, Sarita added. According to CBS Sacramento, the price premium was actually supposed to be $6.99 per gallon at that station, but a technological error moved the decimal point, making fuel cheaper. Eddie Sarita, who filled up his tank for just $14, said the scene was crazy. It turned into a circus within a matter of minutes, he said to the press. On Monday, the American Automobile Association reported that the average gallon of gas in California cost $6.43. Nationally, a gallon of gasoline costs an average of $5.01.4 per gallon, according to the AAA. Across the country, gasoline prices are so high that thieves have resorted to innovating ways to steal fuel. On Friday, the Daily Wire reported that police are warning about fuel theft in Nevada. Unfortunately, with the rise in fuel prices, we have an increase in fuel theft. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Lieutenant Jeff Swanbeck told Fox 5. Some gas stations have been hit for thousands of gallons, and they will continue to go back until the tank is drained. That is thousands of dollars in losses for these gas stations, and sometimes it almost gets to the point where it puts them out of business. These thieves are very sophisticated, Swanbeck added. They will take a truck that looks just like a normal truck, like a freeway service truck, and there is an intricate piping inside of them. The Daily Wire also reported that gas prices in California are some of the voters' biggest concerns heading into the 2022 election cycle. They're beyond furious. It's called desperation. Representative Lou Correa of California recently told the media, I don't hear anything about the other national issues we're focused on in Washington. The thing I hear about is gasoline. What are you going to do to bring down the gas prices? A portion of the local media coverage can be seen here.
At a gas station in Rancho Cordova. Premium gas was selling for 69 cents a gallon. Yep, and word got out fast.
I started looking around and everybody had a smile. Like everybody had a big smile and they kind of were like not looking at you in your eyes. And
oh yeah, Daryl Sarita was on empty and of course filled up his tank for just $14. Station management didn't want to comment on the mistake. The last time gas prices were 69 cents a gallon was back in 1978. So that was a fun accident, but here is the reality. California has the highest gas prices in the nation, now more than $2 higher than this time last year. In LA County, the average this morning is $6.45, followed closely by $6.41 in OC, $6.40 in Ventura County, and $6.31 in the IE.
So, and I mean, yeah, I'm sure that there was a line outside the going out to the street and everything else. And I don't know if it's the same in California, because I don't know if it's a state regulation or if it's federal regulation. But typically, even if it's for a glitch, you can't change the price twice in 24 hours, typically. And I think that is a federal regulation, because I think that gets regulated by the FTC, which means that, yeah, for 24 hours, they have to sit on that 69 cents and just let their tanks get drained. So that's what we see off of that. Looks like our IBD is done archiving, so we can go look at that. But yeah, I'm sure that everybody was real happy about that for just a little bit. I'm pretty sure everybody was going and grabbing every gas can they had. And of course, it had to be by gas cans because it's California. And I mean, I think you get life imprisonment or the death penalty if you pour gasoline into anything other than an approved container. Is it the death penalty now in California for that? For possible pollution? Or is it just life imprisonment still? I don't know. Let's grab one from IBD. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Futures, what to do after Monday's stock market plunge. Fed meeting, key inflation report next. This is from Scott Latonin. Dow futures were higher following Monday's stock market plunge. The major indices sold off with heavy losses to hit new 2021 lows as Treasury yields surged to their highest level since 2011. Up next, more inflation data is due, out with the Labor Department's Producer Price Index. Let's see. 11.1% for March. No, I'm sorry, 11.3 for March, 11.1 for April. I'm going to say 11.4 for May. Well, the Federal Reserve's highly anticipated two-day meeting will also kick off. Before Tuesday's open, Dow Futures rose 0.1% versus fair value, and the S&P moved up 0.2%. The Nasdaq gained 0.4% versus fair value. Remember, overnight action in Dow Futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. The 10-year yield surged higher to 3.36% on Monday, its highest level since April of 2011. Meanwhile, U.S. oil prices remain near recent highs, with West Texas Intermediate trading around $121 a barrel in early March. WTI briefly topped out above $130 a barrel. 3.36% on the 10-year yield, without the production to back it up. Producer prices are expected to rise 0.8% in May after moving up 0.5% in April. According to Econoday, producer price inflation is expected to jump 11% year over year. The Producer Price Index is a measure of pricing strength based on selling prices received by domestic producers for their output. The Fed will begin its latest two-day policy meeting on Tuesday, and it is widely believed that the central bank will raise the benchmark interest rate by 0.5% on Wednesday. But expectations that the Fed will be forced to move in it even more aggressively this year are on the rise since Friday's hot inflation report. On Monday, the Dow dove 2.8%, while the S&P moved down 3.9%. The tech-heavy Nasdaq tumbled 4.7%. Among ETFs, the Nasdaq tracker QQQ Trust dropped 4.65%. The SPDR S&P 500 ETF declined 3.8%. Oracle reported earnings after the close on Monday. Oracle shares jumped 12% in extended trade after the company reported better than expected earnings and sales results. Tesla skidded more than 7% Monday. Among Dow leaders, Apple sold off 3.8% and Microsoft traded 4.2% lower in today's stock market. As the market correction worsens, Dow leaders Chevron, Merck, and Travelers, along with Carlyle, Health Equity, Northrop Grumman, and World Wrestling Entertainment are among IBD's top stocks to watch for Tuesday. WWE is an IBD leaderboard stock. WWE was also featured in this week's Stocks Near a Buy Zone column. So that's what we see coming off the markets for that. See, we got through the unpreparedness. Here's a question for you. Do you feel well prepared, well positioned to face economic challenges? White House Press Secretary, token diversity hire, says Americans are well positioned to face economic challenges. From Megan Vasquez. Why do I feel like, just looking over on the chat, we have some bad news here? What do we have going on? Oh, F's in the chat. Ooh. F's in the chat. I'm going to throw an F up for that. All right, let's get back into the other bad news. The White House maintained on Monday that Americans are well equipped to deal with current economic hurdles, including U.S. stocks plunging into a bear market because of President Biden's efforts in office. When asked by the White House's reaction to the falling stock market, including all the gains made since Biden took office last year being wiped out, Press Secretary Token Diversity Hire said that the White House is watching the situation closely. We know families are concerned about inflation and the stock market. That is something that the president is really aware of, she said during Monday's press briefing, adding that the U.S. is not only the only country dealing with what we're seeing at the moment as it relates to inflation. The press secretary went on to blame the ongoing war in Ukraine and inflation caused by the world's emergence from the pandemic lockdowns as factors playing into the current state of the economy. Dude, if you're emerging from the lockdowns, your economy should be booming. I mean, it should be at some point just racing and screaming along, not doing what it's doing right now. But Diversity Hire argued that despite the stock market's drop, a host of other troubling economic indicators, it's the White House's view that Americans are in better shape to deal with economic problems than before Biden took office. The way that we see this is the American people are well positioned to face those challenges because of the economic historic gains that we've made under this president in the last 16 months, she continued. The unemployment rate remains at 3.6%, slightly higher than a half-century low recorded in February, but Americans' wallets are getting pummeled by the rising cost of goods and diminishing stock values. And like I said, how long does this stay at this? And how long does workforce participation stay low? That's the big question. Now, what we saw when we came out of the pandemic. What we saw when we came out of that was a lot of people going into retail, restaurant jobs. A lot of backlog has backlogged, like especially with raw materials coming from overseas, backlogged a lot of factories. Plus, there were a lot of those that were out there because, these people are saying, well, we can't find help, we'll pay you this much, that much. A lot of times it's in town, and whereas, for the producer jobs, a lot of people will have to travel for that. They don't always live in the same town as the factory that they would work in or something like that. But one thing to pay attention to is whether or not, especially when it does come to a job that's out of town, which a lot of them are at this point, can you afford to drive to work under these fuel prices? And are people going to be losing or walking away from a lot of the jobs that they have because they just can't afford to go to work? The average nationwide price for a gallon of regular gas recently hit $5 for the first time ever. According to AAA, consumer confidence hit a record low. Data released last week showed, and on Friday, a miserable consumer price index report showed U.S. inflation was significantly higher than economists had expected last month, spurring Monday's stock market shifts. U.S. stocks on Monday plunged into a bear market as investors grew increasingly nervous about the prospect of an even harsher rate increases from the Federal Reserve, which are meant to take some of the sting out of inflation. After raising the rates by half point in May, an action the Fed hadn't taken since 2000, Jerome Powell pledged more of the same until the central bank was satisfied that the inflation was under control. At that point, the Fed would resume standard quarter-point hikes, he said. But after May's hotter-than-expected inflation report, Wall Street is increasingly calling for tougher action from the Fed to keep prices under control. Pressed on the effect prospective retirees may be feeling as a result of the plunges in the value of their 401k, Diversity Hire said, "We know that high prices are having a real effect on people's lives. We get that, and we're incredibly focused on doing everything that we can to make sure the economy is working for the American people, but we're coming out of the strongest job markets in American history, and that matters. And a lot of that is thanks to the American Rescue Plan." What? What strong job market are you seeing, other than the fact that, once again, gas is so high that people can't afford to go to these entry-level jobs? They just can't. And furthermore, a lot of them, and I really do anticipate seeing a weaker than expected jobs report coming out of the summer jobs, because once again, you get your kid, works at the golf course, works at the campground, works as a janitor in the hotel. I'm trying to think of what is out there for seasonal work for kids right now, and I can't really think of it. But all these 7 1/4 jobs out there, if you're anywhere outside of what? Maybe 20 miles? Mom and dad are spending more to take you back and forth to work than you're making off that job. So that's something else to keep in mind with that. But hey, Toke University I hear says that you're in a great position and you're doing great. All right, just a couple more on the finance side of things. A couple from the Blaze, including one of the explanations from the Blaze, and then we'll actually get in and start talking about the January 6th committee. I know you're all so excited. Oil Industry Insider exposes Biden admin's incompetence, says that they were shocked to learn basic fact about production. From Chris Enlow. The Biden admin allegedly thought oil and gas producers could drill on demand, but were shocked to learn that's not how oil production actually works. According to the Financial Times, and we do have that article right here, the White House has been pleading with oil producers to boost production as Americans face record high gas prices. Their demands would sharply cut against President Brandon's liberal environmental policy goals. Yeah, but he can afford that. Look, that's a little sidebar off of that. Biden can afford to give the finger to the environmental movement because, I mean, what are they going to do? Vote Republican? He's got them captive, and they have twisted themselves into such a pretzel of fear of, if I don't vote for Biden, or the Democrat, the local Democrat, a Republican might win, and it'll be Tatooine next year. Simultaneously exposed Biden admin's ignorance of the complexities associated with oil production. The Financial Times claimed that oil companies had not heeded their demands, but Bob McNally, the head of consultancy at Rapidan Energy, said something else is behind lagging production. McNally, in fact, told the Financial Times that the Biden admin was painfully unaware that oil production is not an overnight process. When the White House started calling around in a panic, they thought shale oil production could grow sharply in the near term, like in a matter of months or quarters, McNally explained. They were shocked to learn that it's like asking for blood from a stone, it's almost impossible. While it is not true that oil companies are price gouging because they do not set the gas prices, the Biden admin has not given them incentive to boost production. After all, why would a company that's subject to the volatile commodities market make significant investments in oil production if the federal government repeatedly enacts policies that are hostile to oil production? These are businesses, the points of which are to make money, not throw it away. What is Biden doing about gas prices, you ask? The national average hit $5.01 a gallon on Monday, another new record. But what exactly the Biden admin is doing to help Americans remains unclear. Last week, Biden continued blaming his usual scapegoats, Putin and greedy oil companies, but has yet to offer a substantive solution to the growing crisis. All the Republicans voted down the price gouging bill. That had nothing to do with price gouging. The Washington Post reported Monday that the Biden admin is trying to sell the American people rose-colored glasses, updating the White House messaging to focus on what they claim are positive aspects of an economy that is boiling over with inflation. So that's what we see after that. We're going to briefly look at this Financial Times article, the source for this, and then one of the writers at The Blaze actually has a debunking and explanation of the greedy oil prices narrative that they're trying to force down your throats. From the Financial Times, U.S. oil producers ignore Biden's rallying call to drill. From Miles McCormick. As U.S. petrol prices scale record highs with the cost of a gallon of fuel surpassing $5 for the first time, Biden has pleaded with the country's oil producers to open the taps and stem the surge. But those calls, a stark departure from a president who vowed to crack down on fossil fuels, have largely gone unheeded as the industry insists its drilling spree days are behind it. When the White House started calling around in a panic, they thought shale oil production could grow sharply in the near term, like a matter of months or quarters, said Bob McNally, head of consultancy of Rapidan Energy. Yeah, we saw that too. They were shocked to learn it's like asking for blood from a stone. It's almost impossible. Petrol prices have soared to unprecedented levels as the war in Ukraine exacerbates to an already tight global market. On Saturday, American motorists were paying an average of $5.04 per gallon at the pump. According to AAA, a fresh record, in California, they're paying over $6 a gallon. For consumers, prices at the pump have become one of the most visible impacts of the rampant economy-wide inflation that has created a headache for the president, whom many voters blame for the rise. Fair or not, it's a problem for Biden, as he is seen as the maestro of the economy, even though there's truthfully not much that any president can do to influence gas prices in real time, said Sasha Meckler, executive director of the energy program at Bipartisan Policy Center, a Washington think tank. The admin has scrambled to stem the rise. It has released record volumes of crude from the country's strategic reserves, which, by the way, is going to be competing for the gas that you put in your car in order to fill back up the next time somebody who's fiscally responsible has the reins. So do keep that in mind. Waive certain anti-pollution rules and lean on producers in the Middle East to pump more. But with prices continuing to climb, the White House has urged the domestic industry to raise production, which at around 11.6 million barrels a day last month, remains well below its pre-pandemic peak of almost 13 million barrels per day. Remember that? Remember when the WTI oil price was negative? Briefly. When OPEC decided to come back out and say, hey, screw you, Russia. We're going to go pump and we're going to turn the spigot on and let it go. That was a glorious week. That was like a month, actually. That was a glorious month. All right. Last one on finance before we get into the regular news of the day. Coming from The Blaze, Roth debunked and explained no, greedy oil companies are not to blame for gas prices. From Carol Roth. And no leftoid is ever going to see this, because if you try to use this as your citation, and I'll link this in here for you guys, but if you try to use this in an argument on Twitter for your explanation, they're going to say, oh, it's The Blaze. Glenn Beck is an evil Nazi. All right. U.S. gas prices hit an average of $5 a gallon for the first time last week, according to AAA. Americans are having to spend more of their hard-earned money on energy, but who's really to blame? It's probably helpful to start with a breakdown of the components of the price of gas. The cost of crude is the biggest component of a gallon of gas and can skew the cost. In January, by the U.S. Energy Information Admin, the cost of crude was just over half the cost of gasoline, at 52%. In February, it was 61%, and as of March 2022, it was 59%. The total cost of a gallon of regular gasoline, diesel varies slightly, given its overall weighting to cost. Changes to crude oil prices have an outsized impact on final gas prices. The remaining major cost areas include refining, marketing, distribution, and taxes. As of March of 2022, refining was about 18% of the total cost, distribution and markets about 12%, and taxes about 12%, depending on your location. It is worth noting that gas stations make very little, and they don't reap windfalls when prices go up. Most gas stations are independently operated. Even those that bear a brand associated with a major oil company, it's estimated that a retailer's markup on a gallon of gas is around 15 cents. And the profit after expenses averages around 2 cents per gallon. Because of this low take, most gas stations supplement their business by selling a variety of other things from cigarettes to beverages. Yeah, we talked about when gas prices started going up. We actually talked on this program when I lived in Kenosha, which, I mean, I'm not doxing myself from saying that I used to live in Kenosha. Everybody knows that I used to live in Kenosha. I think most people know that I don't live there anymore. It's about an hour away from where I live now. But when I lived in Kenosha, and I lived downtown in the ghetto, there was a gas station around the corner from me. It was called Luperini's. I believe it showed up in my streams a couple times when I was streaming from on the ground. And Luperini's, there were a couple other stations around the city that did this too, but I remember that one because that one was the closest one to me at the time. When I was really, really poor, I used to walk over there for cigarettes. But they always had, when gas was really high. When it started to level off, they did away with this, but they had a cash price and a credit price. And your cash price was usually 5 to 7 cents lower than the credit price. Because there is usually a difference. Usually they have to pay a markup for the credit card processing at the gas station. But they balance it out so it goes between cash and credit, and there's some other internal workings that go with the gas station. But like usually they'll just sit and absorb that. But when they can make the difference between the two, like they said in the article here, the gas stations don't make bunk off gas, in spite of the fact that's usually probably their biggest volume of business, is the gasoline. But the problem with this, or the solution that some of these gas station owners have seen, is that, hey, if you're going to go in, if you're going to go to the ATM, take some cash out and go in and pay cash, prepay or otherwise, for the gallon or the gas tank that you just filled up, as you're standing at the counter, you're going to see, hey, there's a 5-hour energy. Man, I'm kind of dragging today. Oh, you know what? There's a Monster. Yeah, it's a little bit overpriced here, but, I can grab it. I don't have to go run to the grocery store or something where it's 70 cents less or something like that. Man, am I hungry. That bag of chips looked good. Hey, that hot dog that's on the rotisserie, that looks really good. And I'd be willing to bet that if I drove down to Kenosha right now, down to the old neighborhood, and saw Luperini's, they'd probably have a cash price on right now. I would bet almost anything right now that they have a cash price incentive. The cost of crude is set by factors of supply and demand. Supply and demand imbalances can lead to major swings in the price of oil. As we've seen recently, of course, there is also a major oil cartel that decides how much to produce at any given time, which factors heavily into supply. On the demand side, the world has seen massive shifts because of decisions made around the world related to the pandemic and changes in behaviors that brought about. As people were locked down, demand plummeted, and as people emerged from lockdowns, demand increased. When China fully emerges from another series of lockdowns as the #1 importer of oil in the world, it will add demand to the worldwide market, which they'll probably go turn to Russia and say, Russia, you are a neighbor, you give us gasoline. In 2021, the US used almost 20 million barrels per day worldwide. Around 100 million barrels per day were used. You can see why President Brandon's PR stunts of releasing small amounts of inventory from the US strategic reserves wasn't going to have a meaningful, lasting impact on pricing. On the supply side, in addition to the whims of OPEC Plus regarding production, a variety of domestic and international factors impact oil production. The push for green energy has thwarted the progress that the U.S. was making in energy independence and an increasing supply. The Biden admin canceling oil and gas leases, shutting down pipeline progress, and having substantial red tape for drilling and production all factor into the market calculations on what supply will be like today and going forward. Additionally, the demonization of this critical industry, including the push of ESG initiatives to direct capital away from traditional energy projects, has led to substantial underinvestment in the sector, which also materially impacts the supply side of the equation. It's estimated that as much as $1 trillion in investment has been postponed or canceled over the past few years, with a large part of that related to the ESG and green energy pushes. So, there you go. There's a lot of factors that are going into this, but gouging is not one of them. And again, if you guys want to look at this for yourself or use this to maybe change the mind of some leftoid out there, I don't think they're going to listen to it, but the article is linked in the chat if you guys want it. All right, let's talk about something other than finance. Huzzah! Dr. Sebastian Gorka starts out first. Why does he walk so weirdly? Because The Hill reports, the president arrived back at the White House Monday after spending the weekend in Delaware. Let's watch. No questions, just keep walking. Which it's weird to me too when we look at something like this, because we always talk about, oh, the president spent his weekend in Delaware. He went to his beach house in Delaware. He was always in Delaware. And it happens so often that if you changed it out to Gulf, and you changed the president from Biden to Trump, all these same people who were saying, oh, we support you for re-election out there off of this would be melting down. How much did he spend in golf? All right, let's talk about January 6th. We got one here to start off with from NPR. January 6th panel says Trump fleeced his base and 5 other takeaways from the second hearing. And NPR watched the hearings because they know that this is state-sponsored media. And they will make sure that you know about what happened there if they have to come and round you up. Strap you into a chair and tape your eyes open so you can see the propaganda that they're pushing. Because NPR needs you to know that anything that is to the right of Mao is evil. And they need our money, comrade, to tell you that. So make sure you hit that donate button because your taxpayer subsidies don't do enough for NPR. This article is from Domenico Montanaro, and let's get into it. Never Printing a Reality, National Progressive Radio. Let's see what they have to say. It wasn't in prime time this time, but the January 6th circus held an eyebrow-raising hearing on Monday in its second of 7 promised ones. This hearing pulled back the curtain on what life was like in the Trump campaign and in the White House in the days following the election night of 2022. Why? Don't you mean election month? With taped testimony from Trump's campaign advisors and lawyers, the committee painted a picture of a president who refused to listen to the truth, insulated himself in the bubble of election lie conspiracies, fleeced his own supporters out of money based on the lie, and wielded the power to incite violence. Here are 6 takeaways from what we learned from the hearing. I'm going to give you full disclosure right now. I didn't watch this one. Partially because I didn't know what was going on during the day. I was actually prepared to go back and stream the primetime one. And then I found out after they were done with this bread and circus that there wasn't going to be a primetime one. So we played Fallout 3 instead. Together. As friends. It was Team Normal versus Trump. This is the kind of stuff you usually only get from deeply reported post-campaign books. Instead, it was on live television with taped on-camera testimony from the people at the highest level of the Trump campaign, with no cross-examination. The committee used lots of footage from its taped interviews with professionals from the Trump's 2020 campaign, Trump's campaign manager Bill Stepien, senior advisor Jason Millen, and multiple lawyers. Stepien was originally scheduled to testify in person, but was unable to do so because his wife went into labor. Stepien said that he was happy to be referred to as Team Normal, though not everyone buys that rebranding of the person who led the effort to re-elect Trump. Still, this group of campaign professionals say they all have the same message. They tried to tell Trump the truth, that the outlook was bleak, that he should not declare victory on election night. He was going to lose, and this election fraud claims were as former AG Barr called them, bogus and silly, idiotic, stupid, complete nonsense, crazy stuff. And that's not including 3 times the Monday viewing audience heard Barr say the claims were bullshit and doing a great disservice to the country.
So the president did get rid of Team Normal, and I'd like to play a clip showing that the president found the people he needed to perpetuate his claims of fraud.
They saw a big truck bringing in 100,000 ballots in garbage cans, in waste paper baskets, in cardboard boxes, and in shopping baskets. And every single one of them was for Biden because they were being notified by Smartmatic.
The selective editing. They're not going to show the full clip. They're just going to, cut it out and then, jump cut.
In Frankfurt, that Biden was way behind, and they better come up with a lot more ballots, and we can prove every single thing I just said. If you gave me the paper ballots, I could probably turn around each one of these states. I'm absolutely convinced if you let me examine each one of those ballots, I'd pull out enough that were fraudulent that it would shake the hell out of the country.
It can set and run an algorithm that probably ran all over the country to take a certain percentage of votes from President Trump and flip them to President Biden, which we might never have uncovered had the votes for President Trump not been so overwhelming in so many of these states that it broke the algorithm.
I remember that one of the things Mark said at some point was, you can't show an actual vote was flipped, which I found at the time to be a remarkable assertion because you don't have to have the gun to see the body lying on the floor bleeding out with 5 bullet holes in it was killed by a gun.
What they were proposing, I thought was nuts. The theory was also completely nuts, right? And there was a combination of Italians, Germans. Different things have been floating around as to who was involved. Remember Hugo Chavez and the Venezuelan. She has an affidavit from somebody who says they wrote a software in, it's something with the Philippines and that. Just all over the radar.
Did you ever share, Mr. Kushner, your view of Mr. Giuliani? Did you ever share your perspective about him with the president?
All right, so that is that. Number 2, Trump didn't listen to the professionals and instead became detached from reality. Trump broke with a team that had run his campaign and was trying to get him reelected, and instead went down a deep rabbit hole of false conspiracies that were debunked repeatedly by lawyers and Justice Department officials. Barr described the fast and furious nature of those conspiracies as whack-a-mole. Former acting AG Richard Donahue said the Justice Department looked into specifics. They debunked them and told the president that. How'd Trump react? He wouldn't fight us on it. He would just move on to another, Donahue said in a taped testimony.
At a later hearing, you'll hear live testimony from the former acting Deputy Attorney General of the Department of Justice, Rich Donahue. But now I'd like to play a portion of his testimony.
I tried to, again, put this in perspective and to try to put it in very clear terms to the president. And I said something to the effect of, sir, we've done dozens of investigations, hundreds of interviews. The major allegations are not supported by the evidence developed. We've looked at Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Nevada. We're doing our job. Much of the info you're getting is false. And then I went into, for instance, this thing from Michigan, this report about 68% error rate. Reality is it was only 0.0063% error rate, less than 1 in 15,000. So the president accepted.
All right, according to testimonies, Trump looked like a president throwing anything he could at the wall to try to stay in power. If he really believes this stuff, Barr said during his interview with the committee, he's become detached from reality. When is my direct deposit going to be coming in? Oh, wait, I can't say that on camera? Coming from so many Republicans testifying, it's much harder for them to simply be dismissed. I have no problem dismissing them. I have no problem dismissing the monoparty. So I don't know where NPR is getting this from, but I have no problem dismissing what the monoparty had to say. It's notable that the people the viewing audience heard from Monday in their testimony were all Republicans, in name only. That carries weight even when it comes to Stepien. He's working for Republican Harriet Hageman, the Trump-endorsed candidate in Wyoming, who is challenging Vice Chair Liz Cheney. These were many of the people in Trump's inner circle on his campaign trying to elect him, and even his family, Jared and Ivanka, who had formerly worked in the White House. Conservatives are getting a different message where they get their news and information, but if they do peek at the primary source material and who's coming from, except we can't see the primary source material because the 13 Democrats on the J6 committee have selectively edited it. Many people who are on their side, it's possible some might break through. It at least makes it harder for Trump to dismiss them. Well, he might not be able to dismiss them, but I can dismiss them. It's all a big part of the monoparty. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. The committee began to lay out a fleecing of MAGA. In the second part of the hearing, an investigator for the committee said in a taped interview that $250 million was raised off the election lies from Trump supporters following Election Day. That included $150 million in the first week. But the investigator said most of the money went to groups supporting Trump, not fun court battles. The committee said most of the money went to the Save America PAC, which is the major Trump-supporting political action committee. Trump's press releases go out through it, for example.
Without objection, the chair recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Lofgren, for a closing statement.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now that we understand the litigation efforts by President Trump and his allies, I'd like to present additional actions taken by the Trump campaign during this time. President Trump continued to push the stolen election narrative, even though he and his allies knew that their litigation efforts, making the same claim, had failed. It's worth pointing out that litigation generally does not continue past the safe harbor date of December 14th. But the fact that this litigation went on, well, that decision makes more sense when you consider the Trump campaign's fundraising tactics. Because if the litigation had stopped on December 14th, there would have been no fight to defend the election and no clear path to continue to raise millions of dollars. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd ask for unanimous consent to include in the record a video presentation describing how President Trump used the lies he told to raise millions of dollars from the American people. These fundraising schemes were also part of the effort to disseminate the false claims of election fraud.
Without objection, so
My name is Amanda Wick, and I'm Senior Investigative Counsel with the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. Between Election Day and January 6th, the Trump campaign sent millions of fundraising emails to Trump supporters, sometimes as many as 25 a day. The emails claimed the, quote, left-wing mob was undermining the election, implored supporters to, quote, step up to protect the integrity of the election, and encouraged them to, quote, fight back. But as the Select Committee has demonstrated, the Trump campaign knew these claims of voter fraud were false, yet they continued to barrage small-dollar donors.
Number 5, a lot of people face consequences from January 6th, but they're mostly not the people at the top. Yet. In her opening statement, Cheney noted the consequences that may have faced already due to January 6th. Hundreds of our countrymen have faced criminal charges, Cheney said. Many are serving criminal sentences because they believe what Trump said about the election and they acted on it. They came to D.C. at his request. They marched on the Capitol at his request, and hundreds of them besieged and invaded the building at the heart of our constitutional republic. It's not a religion. Over 2 days of hearings, the committee is methodically establishing the building blocks of their public prosecution that Trump is responsible for January 6th. The committee's case against Trump essentially boils down to this. He had the motive and, of course, opportunity as president to cling to power and make money. He had to cling to power and make money. The person who didn't take a salary while he was in office. He had the capacity to incite violence. And people acted on what he said. That was clear from the testimony from white nationalists on Thursday, who said they went to D.C. because they believed they were acting at Trump's behest. Yes, 2 groups that glow in the dark. You might as well drag Patriot Front out there, and hey, you've got him in custody. Why not? And then, after a day of hearings, all of the false conspiracies and election lies Trump was throwing out, there was video of people on January 6th echoing those lies. There are 5 more hearings to come, including Wednesday and Thursday. So, thank you, NPR, for breaking a lot of this down for us. But, I mean, all that we saw, at least off of this article, and again, I will come to this from a point of ignorance because I didn't watch this particular bread circus, is that they're coming back and they're trying to say, well, this is what he did. This is the big lie that he put in. On the day after Election Day, he started coming out saying that he had won, and everybody went back out to try to tell him that he didn't win. And 80s Kid actually points out in the chat, Trump is doing everything he could to stay in power. What are the Democrats doing now? Well, see, that's okay. That's proper because they vote the right way on abortion. You know, it's probably, and I don't know because I've never been over to the UK, but it's probably the same in your neck of the woods where, well, we must do everything that we can to keep Labour in power because if the evil Tories come into power, then you'll never be able to get your abortion again. It'll be authoritarian. So we must keep an authoritarian party in power, but it's okay because it's our authoritarianism. I have no problem dismissing Republicans either, by the way. They suck. Here's one, something Liz Cheney had to say about 2,000 mules.
And this, Donald Trump now, quote, clings to more fantastical theories, such as Dinesh D'Souza's debunked 2,000 mules, even as recounts in Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin confirm Trump lost.
And as Todd Starnes points out, hey, if you really believe 2,000 mules has been debunked, what harm is there in bringing Dinesh D'Souza to testify before you and your fellow Democrats? Well, he can't be controlled. He can't be scripted. They can't put him onto a little script and give him a little payout to make him say what they want him to say, like the witnesses they bring forward. It's the same reason they can't do a cross on any of this. Because somebody might ask a question that isn't on the script. Let's grab one from Insider. Insider says, Fox News host Sean Hannity pitched a last-minute pardon for Hunter Biden to Trump in an attempt to ease the fallout from the Capitol selfie fest, a new report says. And I've told you from the beginning, Fox News is not your friend. They're a mainstream news outlet, just like all the rest of them. From Lauren Frias. Sean Hannity suggested that President Trump pardon Hunter Biden in a bid to smooth things over following the January 6th selfie fest, the Daily Beast reported. The House Select Committee investigating the Capitol riot released text messages on Thursday between Hannity and then Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, in which conservative news host discussed the details of his conversation with Trump on January 7th, 2021, following the attack on the Capitol. Hannity and Trump were apparently discussing ways to address the potential fallout in the wake of hundreds of Hong Kong pro-Trump supporters breaching the Capitol in an attempt to overturn the 2020 election, Hong Kong, including pitching no more stolen election talk and Trump attending inauguration. According to one text message from Hannity, one pitch in particular seemed to pique the former president's interest, issuing a last-minute presidential pardon for Hunter Biden, the son of President-elect Joe Biden. No! He was intrigued by the pardon idea, Hunter, Hannity wrote to McEnany, according to text messages released by the January 6th House panel. Hunter's business dealings in Ukraine were at the center of Trump's pressure campaign on the Ukrainian government in 2019, which led to the first impeachment, witch hunt, in early 2020. Though he currently faces a federal investigation, Hunter has not been charged and denied any wrongdoing. No, we don't pardon for that. A source told the Daily Beast that the pardon suggestion wasn't originally Hannity's idea, but he brought it to Trump because he genuinely wanted some healing. Another person familiar with the conversation between Hannity and Trump told the Daily Beast that Hannity proposed that the pardon might help smooth things over, but the idea was ultimately shut down. It died on the vine, the person said, saying it was never seriously considered. Good. And no, Hannity is not your friend. We covered this already. But I wanted to get onto this one, because this is definitely where we're going in this country. And I would almost expect that if Republicans take power, there's going to be an attempt to come back out and try to prosecute Democrats off of this. This is moving towards a civil war aspect. And I don't like any of this. But I'm not surprised that it's going to be Democrats that do it as well. A.G. Garland says he's watching all January 6th committee hearings. And he's salivating while he's doing so. From Pete Williams. A.G. Garland said Monday he's watching the televised hearings of the Congressional Committee investigating the January 6th riot as members of the House panel focused on former President Trump's election fraud claims on the second day of testimony. I am watching, and I'll be watching all the hearings, although I may not be able to watch all of it live, he said. I can assure you that the January 6th prosecutors are watching all the hearings. The House panel held its second day of hearings on Monday and plans to hold several more before the end of July. At a news conference announcing criminal charges in a Texas gun trafficking case, Garland repeated his now familiar response that the Justice Department will follow the law and the facts wherever they lead in the January 6th circus, but apparently sensitive to criticism that the government isn't doing enough, he gave a detailed explanation of why prosecutors don't comment on ongoing investigations. We do it both for the viability of our investigations and because it's the right thing to do with respect to the civil liberties of people under investigation, Garland said. As a crowd of leftoids on Twitter jumped up and said, Evil Republicans don't deserve civil liberties. Eventually, that information comes out in the form of your search warrant affidavits, in our orders and our pleadings, and eventually if there are charges. But for our investigations to proceed in an efficient way, we have learned over many, many years that this is the way our investigation should go. We don't put our political enemies in jail in this country. It is actually one of the foundations of the Declaration of Independence. I mean, most people, when they think of the Declaration of Independence, let me grab the text so I know that I'm getting it the right way. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. And this is the part that most people know. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If this is triggering 80s kid, I'm sorry. But this is the love letter that we sent over to your king's ancestor 240 years ago. Almost 250 years ago. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that, wherever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. And that's what most people know of the Declaration of Independence, especially the top part here, the certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But, for the first time in my life, I know that it was very late. Last year on July 4th, I sat down with patriotic music behind me and read this entire document front to back. And in this, this isn't just, we hold these truths to be self-evident and we're going off and making a government. This is a bullet point list of everything that the government of England was doing at the time. At the time that this document came out, this is what they were doing. And one of those was that the king was persecuting political enemies. He was going out of his way to put political enemies in jail. And that's why I say we don't do that in this country, but it seems like we're about to. Because that was the unaccountable system that we left in 1776. From my understanding, the courts in the UK have become much better in the past 240 years. But that's what was going on in the late 18th century. We are not supposed to be doing this here. And yet, here we are. All right, and the Donald got his 2 cents in. From the Hill, Trump releases 12-page response to January 6th hearing. This will probably be selectively edited off of this, but they do have the full document here. So I will link this Hill article for you guys. It's also, I believe, somebody, I think it was Putz, put the full document into the Discord already, just the 12 pages itself without the article. But I'll put the article in chat for you guys. But this is from Brett Samuels. Former President Trump on Monday issued a 12-page rebuttal to the testimony and evidence presented by a House committee investigating the Capitol riot on January 6, 2021, accusing Democrats of seeking to distract from a series of domestic issues facing the country. 17 months after the events of January 6, they were horrible. They're the worst. January 6 shouldn't have happened, okay? It's the worst. Democrats are unable to offer solutions, Trump said in a statement released through his Save America PAC. They are desperate to change the narrative of a failing nation without even making mention of the havoc and death caused by the radical left just months earlier. Okay, the radical left, they were horrible. And I wanted to go after them and take care of them and take care of you, the American people. But I couldn't because we don't put our political enemies in jail in this country. Make no mistake, they control the government. They own this disaster. They're hoping that these hearings will somehow alter their failing prospects. Okay? It's the worst. Their prospects are the worst. The 12-page document underscores how Trump has yet to move on from his false claims of fraud. Oh, jeez. The editorialization of the Hill and the 2020 election, how the committee's work may be central to a potential 2024 campaign. The House Committee investigating the Selfie Fest has held 2 public hearings thus far, as it builds a case to show Trump was repeatedly informed by aides that the election was not stolen or rigged, but continued to claim publicly that it was for months, misleading his supporters. Hong Kong, 81 million votes, more votes than even Barack Obama, 10 scoops of ice cream. In the 12-page document, Trump repeats a handful of disproven claims to assert the 2020 election was stolen from him and rigged in favor of Democrats, even though nothing bad happened, Susan, including some that were brought up during testimony by former Trump campaign and admin officials. One section of Trump's statement focuses on ballot trafficking claims, for which he cites Dinesh D'Souza's documentary, 2,000 Mules, in testimony shown earlier Monday. Former AG Barr laughed at the mention of the film, saying that he was unimpressed with it and dismissed the idea that it proved widespread fraud. And they throw that word widespread in there. like it has any bearing on anything. Nobody believes there was widespread fraud. Another section asserts that President Brandon could not have won the states of Pennsylvania, Arizona, or Georgia because he got more black votes and Hispanic votes than former President Obama. Each of those states has performed audits and recounts and found no evidence of widespread fraud. Trump in one section claimed that states such as Pennsylvania and Michigan took additional time after Election Day to count ballots because it was part of an elaborate scheme to ship in fraudulent votes so Brandon could erase Trump's narrow leads in those states. But Chris Direwolf testified in person on Monday to dismiss that very theory known as the Red Mirage. Look, here's the thing. Nothing bad happened in 2020, but in a simulation, they told you what was going to happen, that there was going to be the Red Mirage, that Trump was going to be so far ahead going in on election night. It was going to be massively ahead. It was going to look like a blowout on election night. And then at the end of election night, all the mail-in ballots were going to come in against him. They told you that was going to happen before election night. And now they want me to believe that they weren't planning something like this in a simulation. But of course, not doing it in real life because nothing bad happened. But that's what we see off of that. All right, let's talk about the March for Life. Or I'm sorry, March for Our Lives. Mr. Andy Ngo. A stampede broke out, or almost broke out rather, at the pro-gun control March for Our Lives rally at National Mall in Washington, D.C. after attendees thought there was a shooter.
We fight every day for our...
Do not run! Freeze! Do not run! There is no issue here! Do not run!
We fight every day for our...
Do not run! Another angle of the near stampede at the National Mall.
We fight every day for our... Oh my God. Oh my God.
Do not run! Freeze! Do not run! There is no issue here! Do not run!
¿Qué le dije yo? ¿Qué le dije yo?
I guess my big question is, what caused them to believe that there was an active shooter? Because I didn't hear a shot or anything. And I always love this article too. And of course it's blue waves. Now, if they were all legally carrying, no one would have been running. But they were in a no-gun zone, so a criminal would have been able to harm them. What is so difficult to understand about the sensible God-given right to self-protection? And, of course, Braden Schaefer Badowski, where in the Bible or the Constitution does God give you the right to a gun? Full Stance never said anything about the right to a gun. He said the right to a self-protection. The Second Amendment does not say God-given right, but for some reason pro-Second Amendment people always seem to say these words when it's not true. Owning guns is not a God-given right. No, the right to defend yourself is. The right to defend yourself is absolutely a God-given right. And in order to defend yourself, you hope to have the same level of firepower or offensive capability as the person you're defending yourself against. But there's always that one. From CNN, Oh, that's a video one.
We fight every day for our...
Police apparently detained an individual who interfered with the event, but said no weapons were involved. We're going to bookmark that because I'm actually going to look into that one. Let's bookmark that because I'm going to see. I'm very curious as to what actually caused this. All right. Some more March for Our Lives news. David Hogg says Marco Rubio canceled meeting over being triggered, but apologizes after Rubio staff calls him out. Don't lie again, we have receipts, from Carlos Garcia. Gun control advocate David Hogg said Republican Senator Marco Rubio of Florida canceled a meeting after getting triggered, but he apologized after Rubio staff called him out publicly for lying. Hogg tweeted about the canceled meeting on Thursday from his social media account. Rubio staff, I can't meet with him or his staff because I trigger him. I just want to have a conversation, Hogg tweeted out. Please meet with me, Marco Rubio. I just want to figure out how we can stop these things from happening. We have to end the contentious debate and find out what we can agree on. Rubio's chief of staff, Michael Needham, excoriated Hogg and called him out. No one said such a thing. As for your meeting, you must be confused, as we had a 2 p.m. meeting scheduled with you. However, since you are lying and clearly used all this for self-promotion, that meeting is now canceled. Also, the reporter doing a profile of you knows that the meeting is real, since she was emailing yesterday with our comms team about it, Needham said in a second tweet. Don't lie again, we have the receipts, he threatened. Hogg apologized soon after. An honest mistake. We got our meetings confused in the flurry, and my staff misinformed me. I apologize. We'd still love to meet with you and have an honest, respectful discussion. Read his tweet. Deleted the tweet because it wasn't true, but attaching here for transparency. All right, Scott Wiener. Yesterday, Proud Boys stormed Drag Queen Story Hour at San Lorenzo Public School Library wearing AK-47 shirts and calling the drag queen pedophile and it. A right-wing militia was arrested for planning to attack Pride in Ohio. Direct results of attacks on LGBTQIARAMIGIXTDLTBMGIA +sign people. Now, you found the glowingest militias out there, which the Proud Boys glow just as brightly as Patriot Front, because you're not getting the pushback like you were hoping to get coming into this. You're not getting the constant attacks. You're not getting any of this like you were hoping and praying to the government that you would get. So now you have to manufacture them. If it was any other group other than the Proud Boys, I might have believed you. Well, I wouldn't believe you it was the Oath Keepers or Patriot Front either. Hell, I would believe America First before I would believe the Proud Boys. And I'm sorry, but the AFPAC people, I don't trust them either. But I would trust that. As grassroots, before I would believe the Proud Boys did this without a government prod. From San Francisco Gate. Hate crime investigation underway after alleged Proud Boys stormed Drag Queen Story Hour at Bay Area Library. Did somebody get hurt? Did somebody get punched? Did somebody get killed? Police are investigating an incident that occurred during a Drag Queen Story Hour at the San Lorenzo Library on Saturday afternoon after Penda Dulce, the San Francisco drag performer, hosting the reading, said that they were targeted by a group of 8 to 10 Proud Boys who stormed the room and shouted homophobic and transphobic threats at them, forcing them to leave the event with a security guard and hide in a back office. The Alameda County Sheriff's Office said the police responded to a report of a disturbance in the library at around 1:30 p.m. and discovered 5 men described as members of the Proud Boys organization. The men were described as extremely aggressive with threatening, violent demeanor, causing people to fear for their safety, the Sheriff's Office said. It is not clear whether they are members of the National Proud Boys organization or were simply representing themselves as such. They are members of the National Federal Bureau of Investigations. The Sheriff's Office has said an active hate crime investigation is underway, as is an investigation into the annoying and harassing of children. Yeah, I'm going to go on a limb and say that this is not what happened. Well, it happened, but is not as it was presented to us. And like I said, I mean, if it was Fuentes and his people, I would believe this more. But the Proud Boys, I mean, come on. Every time Antifa needs a boogeyman or a scapegoat, it just so happens that Enrique Tarrio's friends just happen to show up right there at the right amount of time to get the maximum amount of news coverage. I wonder why that might be. And again, today is the 14th, which means, and we started talking about this yesterday with Patriot Front, which means we went 13 days into Pride Month, which was supposed to be marked with violence and hatred towards gay people from evil Trump conservatives. And we went 13 days into it, and after we went 13 days into it, the first thing that we hear are from the group that literally nobody had heard of until last year, but we're all supposed to have known as a potential hate group. And the Proud Boys, who just happen to be within camera range every time there is some sort of violent incident. Here's one for our New York friends. Over $200,000 being spent on a drag queen shows in New York City schools. Record show. From Mary Kay Ling and John Levine. New York is showering taxpayer funds on a group that sends drag queens into city schools, often without parental knowledge or consent, even as parents in other states protest increasingly aggressive efforts to expose kids to gender-bending performers. Last month alone, Drag Queen Story Hour, NYC, a nonprofit whose outrageously cross-dressed performers interact with kids as young as 3, earned $46,000 from city contracts for appearances at public schools, street festivals, and libraries, city records show. Since January, the group has organized 49 drag programs in 34 public elementary, middle, and high schools. It boasted on its website with appearances in all 5 boroughs. I can't believe this. I'm shocked, said public school mom and state assembly candidate Helen Quee, whose 11-year-old son attends a Manhattan middle school. I would be furious if he was exposed without my consent. This is not part of the curriculum. Since 2018, the group, previously known as Drag Queen Story Hour NYC, before changing its name earlier this year, has received a total of $207,000 in taxpayer cash. The tally includes $50,000 from New York State through its Council on the Arts, along with $157,000 from the city's Departments of Education, Cultural Affairs, Youth and Community Development, and even the Department of Transportation. City data shows. I'm considering pulling funding to any school in my district that's implementing Drag Queen Story Hour, said City Council member Vicky Palladino of Queens. We're taking hundreds of thousands of dollars out of the pockets of hardworking New York taxpayers to fund a program teaching little children about their gender fluidity. Not on my watch. Most of the money was allocated by City Council members from their discretionary budgets, which set aside $80,000 for the group in the current fiscal year, more than tripling the $25,000 earmarked in 2020. look at you. Just look at you. Now, as far as the drag thing goes, I think Styx has that one best. That this is a walking minstrel show. The people who are the angriest about blackface, the people who say even Joy Reid has to be held accountable for the crime of darkening her skin to represent a person that she is not, because it's not her society, have no problem with this, and in fact encourage this. This is the gender equivalency to blackface. And what do we see? The extremely exaggerated, the big purple hair, the headbands, all the excessive makeup. Now this one doesn't have the gigantic rack like a lot of them do. I do feel like they toned that down a little bit for the kids, but I mean, what do we see when we see a drag? What do we see when we turn on RuPaul? Lots of excessive, high makeup, big hair, heavily styled hair. Typically a heavily sexualized model of what they believe the woman is. Just like what a minstrel show was. The black people at the time weren't like the ones that were represented in the minstrel show. That's not what they were like. They were, for the most part, regular, hardworking people that just wanted to feed their kids. And yet, once you got to the minstrel show, you got that nice, exaggerated version of what the white men wanted to sit around and laugh about what blackface was. So, yeah, $200,000 for New York City taxpayers to fund this in schools. Speaking of these issues, and we are running out of time in a hurry, because I spent way too much time talking about the gas prices. Alberta Oil Sands Group apologizes for hot lesbians ad. From Slav Kornick. An Alberta pro-oil sands group is apologizing for the controversial advertisement that's received heavy criticism. Canada's oil sands community founder Robbie Picard posted an apology on the group's Facebook page, which includes, "It was not my intent of demeaning women or any people of any sexual orientation." Picard's apology stems from the group releasing an advertisement that has been dubbed the Hot Lesbians ad. The poster features a photo of two women kissing with a caption that reads, "In Canada, lesbians are considered hot. In Saudi Arabia, if you're a lesbian, you die. Why are we getting oil from countries that don't think lesbians are hot?" And there's the ad. Hang on. I don't know if I'm getting quite the full effect of this advertisement. Give me just a minute. The group has been criticized on its Facebook page over the advertisement. That poster was disgusting, fetishizing queer women and reducing the existence of lesbians to something for men's pleasure, for something for men to find hot. Queer relationships between women may be beautiful, but they don't exist for men, Jessa wrote. There are so many ways to raise awareness to any issue without sexualizing or demoralizing human beings or a group of people who face adversity, Catherine wrote. In his apology, Picard added, "It was rather to highlight injustice done by other countries we're purchasing our oil from. I certainly don't want to divide our community. I believe in equality and human rights." Yeah, there was probably a better way to word that, I'm going to say. I actually understand what they're trying to go with that, but there was probably a better way to word that. What can we get to yet? I know we've got to do Twitter trending at the end of the day, too. From the Blaze, Biden says he might issue pro-abortion executive orders if Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade. From Carlos Garcia, President Biden said he was considering issuing pro-abortion executive orders if the Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade. Tell me you don't know what the Constitution says about your job. Without telling me you don't know what the Constitution says about your job. The president made the comments while a guest on Wednesday on the Jimmy Kimmel Live show. Roe versus Wade, boy, these things just keep coming at you, don't they? No, you haven't not had an easies. What terrible job you have. I mean, I'm glad you're doing it, but boy, oh boy, does this seem like a bad gig, said Kimmel. Mr. President, wake up. I think if the court overrules Roe versus Wade and does what is drafted, and if that occurs, I think we have to legislate it. We have to make sure that we pass legislation making it a law. That is, the federal government says that's how it works. Biden went on to recount the history of the case law prior to Roe versus Wade in order to falsely imply that conservatives were seeking to ban all contraceptives. I don't think the country will stand for it. I think what we're going to have to do, there's some executive orders I can employ. We believe we're looking at that right now. That's the full of Biden's appearance. And yes, I'm sorry. I know that there are the America Firsters, the Fuentes people, who think that banning condoms is the way to do this. I know that they're out there. I know that they exist. Banning the pill, banning the IUD. As far as that goes, it's just like any other health decision in my eyes. It's between you and your doctor, and in that case, the person you're screwing. But as far as what President Biden thinks that he can do, or his advisors think that he can do, they need to take a strong look at the Constitution, because, I'm sorry, you can't do that. That's not legal. If Roe versus Wade were to fall tomorrow, if the decision were to come down tomorrow, all enforcement mechanisms and all mechanisms related to the 1973 decision would refer to the states. And under the 10th Amendment, there is no executive order that Biden could then turn around and issue to prevent the states from enforcing as they see fit, in whichever methodology they see fit. That executive order doesn't exist. But Biden doesn't know that. He doesn't even know where his bran muffin comes from in the morning. But that is what we see off of that. From the Daily Wire, abortion activist arrested for chaining himself to SCOTUS fence claims authorities dropped charges out of fear of public perception. From Mary Margaret Olahan, an activist arrested for chaining himself to the barrier protecting the Supreme Court believes that charges against him were dropped because authorities feared his arrest was not a good look. On the morning of June 6th, a man identified as Guido Reichstadter had hopped over the barricades and chained himself to the unscalable fence surrounding the Supreme Court using a bike lock and a chain. Then, as reporters and protesters watched, he took out pliers and attempted to break the key that went to the lock before throwing the key on the ground. "I'm not letting my daughter's rights be taken away by this unelected, unaccountable Supreme Court," he yelled as he stood chained to the fence. Before his exhibition, the pro-abortion protester had cheerfully explained that he feared his daughter's future ability to get an abortion, saying, I'm a dad and I can't sit back while my daughter's rights are taken away. Dude, you have a messed up perception of what rights are. I'm sorry. Just look at you. You're a mess. After several warnings, police arrested Reichstatter and took him to a holding area in the Supreme Court building. The activist told the Daily Wire on Monday he said they booked him, took mugshots, held him, and then transferred him to a central cell block. I stayed there overnight, but I didn't know what was going to happen, he said outside the Supreme Court on Monday morning, where he was protesting with other members of Rise Up for Abortion group. But to Reichstatter's surprise, the charges were dropped. No crap. In the morning, they gave me a pre-hearing interview. I was supposed to have a hearing with the judge at 9, and they sent me back to the cell, and by 12 o'clock, they let me know the charges had been dropped. Thanks, Merrick Garland. Now, if I, even though I wouldn't do this because you know my feelings about taking the fight to the government, you know how I feel about that because that just makes you a fish in a barrel for a rogue FBI sniper. Rogue, I say, because that's what they would say about that sniper. He went rogue, he just went out and acted on his own. We had no control over him. If I did survive chaining myself to the Supreme Court unscalable fence, if I didn't get shot by a sniper, once I went into that cell, you guys would never see me again. I would get lost in the paperwork. I would probably never even go see a trial. I'd be taken away into the cell block and forgotten about. Oh, that person. Oh, who's this person in cell block A? I don't know. Why is he in there? I don't know. We lost the paperwork for him. The U.S. Attorney's Office, which would have handled dropping the charges, declined to comment because they were under orders from Merrick Garland not to comment. I believe this is an op-ed from CNN. Discord at Supreme Court mirrors diminishment of democratic norms. Supreme Court justices are facing protests outside their newly fortified perimeter and from within as they finish an epic session destined to transform the law in America. The warnings from dissenting liberal justices battling the conservative supermajority have become overt. Sotomayor referred last Wednesday to a restless and newly constituted court that sees fit to foreclose remedies in yet more cases, in a decision limiting civil lawsuits against federal agents who violate constitutional rights. Yeah, I don't care for that one. Back to blue, though. A week earlier, the three on the left described a decision staunching a certain claims that ineffective trial counsel in capital cases perverse and illogical. Conservative justices, for their part, have aired their grievances in public settings. Clarence Thomas spoke in May in the distrust among justices, and Samuel Alito recalled the past wound of an indefensible opinion. Meanwhile, the 36 law clerks, the workhorses of the building, are beleaguered by an investigation into a leaked early copy of an opinion in an abortion rights case to Politico. As CNN reported earlier this month, court officials required law clerks to sign affidavits and are taking steps towards obtaining their cell phone data. Some law clerks have sought outside legal advice as they navigate under new clouds of suspicion in what is already the tensest of time of the year. Justices are making final revisions on cases likely to roll back half a century of women's abortion rights, limit states' ability to enact firearm restrictions, and require an increased public funding of religious schools. Not a big fan of increased public funding of religious schools either, or increased public funding of any schools. Because once you take that federal money, they own you. This unprecedented time for the country's highest court mirrors today's political polarization and diminishment of democratic norms. Democracy seems more threatened than at any time since the Civil War, said Michael Klarman, a Harvard professor of American legal history. Apparently not, because he thinks this is a democracy. It compared the current Supreme Court moment to earlier perilous times. The two obvious analogies that come to mind are Dred Scott, which was a time when the country was exploding, and there was tremendous internal controversy at the court. The 57 Dred Scott decision said slaves were not citizens. The other, Klarman said, would be the 1930s when the court was striking down a lot of the New Deal legislation, and Roosevelt was talking about court packing. So, we've got a lot going on here. And it's not just going to be the Roe versus Wade one. I do anticipate that nationwide concealed carry is going to be a thing. It's going to be forced to be shall issue, and then, the next thing is going to be, did they raise the price of the permits? Do they make this so only the elites and the rich people can do this? I don't know, but we'll see what happens off of that. And it is 9:26, which means that we have to probably get out of here. Before we do, though, I want to just talk just a bit about DC. And then we'll do Twitter trending and go. From the Daily Mail, Mayor of DC adds 51st star to American flags, flying above Pennsylvania Avenue as Democrats continue to push for the District of Columbia to be made a state. From Paul Farrell for DailyMail.com. The mayor of D.C. is adding a 51st star to the American flag displayed on Pennsylvania Avenue for Tuesday's Flag Day holiday. This June 14th marks the 106th Flag Day celebration in the United States. Bowser's controversial decision to add a star to the already existing 50, which represent each state of the Union, comes on the heels of a measure approved by the U.S. House that would grant the District of Columbia statehood. The Senate, however, has not approved the measure, nor is it likely to do so. Nor can they, because it doesn't pass constitutional muster. There's a growing movement among Democrats to induct the District of Columbia as a full-fledged state. The people living within its boundaries do not currently have a voting member of Congress, despite its residents paying more in federal taxes than in 21 other states. In a statement, Bowser said, "Today, ahead of Flag Day, I directed our team to hang 51 star flags along Pennsylvania Avenue as a reminder to Congress and the nation that the 700,000 tax-paying American citizens living in D.C. demand to be recognized." The mayor continued, "On Flag Day, we celebrate American ideals, American history, and the American liberty. But the very foundation of those ideals and the basis for our liberty is representation. DC's disenfranchisement is a stain on American democracy, a 220-year-old wrong that demands to be righted." The traditional 50-star American flag was made the official flag of the Union on July 4th, 1960. The stars represent the 50 states. The last state to be admitted was Hawaii, which occurred on August of 1959. During a recent speech at March for Our Lives on June 11th, Mayor Bowser implored Congress to grant statehood to D.C. in addition to pleading for gun control reform. The mayor made reference to gun control and Roe v. Wade in announcing the presence of 51-star flags around the nation's capital on Flag Day. You can't. I don't know if you've ever read the Constitution. You can't make D.C. a state, because then the federal government will be beholden to one state over the other 50. And you know this. It is in the Constitution. It is specifically outlined that the District of Columbia be its own federal district, not beholden to any other state. I have made a proposal to solve this. That any of these 700,000 people that live in D.C., knowing full well, moving there, that they would not have the voting rights, but any of the 700,000 people, because you've already ceded the land on the other side of the Potomac to Virginia, that land, where the people, the residential areas of D.C., goes back to being Maryland. that is the way to solve this. If you really want them to have representation. But the federal government buildings, the National Mall, and then enough land to make utility companies that can make them work, because that was the other thing, is that all utilities, all everything else, all the federal workers for that were supposed to be in DC as well, so they were not beholden to anybody else. That stays as part of as the DC Metro, and then everything else, all the rest of the residential area, cedes itself back to Maryland. But there is a reason DC is not a state and never will be a state. I like this here. Statehood can only be achieved by DC if the House and Senate pass legislation and send it to the President in order to sign it into law. And then it goes over to the Supreme Court, who looks at this and says, Washington, D.C., being a federal district not to be beholden to any state, can never become a state. Sorry, we have to throw this legislation out. It's unconstitutional. But they're not out here to do this. They're just trying to win. They want those permanent 2 Democrat senators. All right. It's 9:30. So we do have one last thing to do here. And that is Twitter trending. Let's grab the trending tab and let's finish out here for the day. All right, trending. Number 1 trend today is that today is Flag Day. And as we just talked about, Bowser was ordering 51-star flags to be displayed on Flag Day. Ted Cruz, long may she wave, Flag Day. Dr. G, today's Flag Day, the American Flag Day. The flag we salute, the flag we see on arrival home, the only flag that we should see flying on our embassies, the flag that enshrouds our service dead. We should never ever forget this. Apparently it's Trump's birthday too. But yes, they've taken the way to try to make this all about Trump. Happy birthday, President Trump, and all the Republicans, GOP, who call themselves patriots on this Flag Day. Next year, you can celebrate your birthday in a newly refurbished Trump Tower. It's Flag Day, and they made it about Trump. Number 3 trending, which is going to be number 2 because we skipped Tuesday Vibe, Donald J. Trump. And I know that we know about all this. The first 2 hearings, the January 6th committee, were all about Trump bad. Today's 1/6 hearing summary. Donald J. Trump is a liar. Donald J. Trump is a grifter. Donald J. Trump is a thug. However, coming from the other side, Eric Greitens, Dow lower than when Joe Biden took office. NASDAQ lower than when Joe Biden took office. S&P lower than when Joe Biden took office. Retirement accounts miss President Trump. Oh, but see, they didn't get down to 17,000, okay? BTS Festa 2022 will be our 3rd. The BTS Army was left teary-eyed with Jimin outpour of love for them in a heartwarming letter. He said, Thank you for always loving our music, our performances, and also us from the bottom of my heart. Is that a dude or a chick? Because I thought this was a boy band. But that looks like a chick. Police 19th anniversary, Bangtan. You have 9 years, 7 boys in preparation to debut, and that's about as far as my Spanish recollection goes, because I'm out of practice. Apo Bangpo Army lives, Army forever, Bangtan forever. Again, I know nothing about this K-pop phenomenon, but it always seems to show up on trending. I would say, out of all the weeks we've been doing trending, which has been a lot because we're on 602 episodes, we've been doing this for 120 weeks. So out of 120 Twitter trendings we've done, I would say probably about 90 of them have had K-pop on them in some way or another. Number 5, something that I can get behind, Little Caesars is trending. Little Caesars announced it is the new official pizza sponsor of the NFL. Anything to stick it out to Papa John for being somewhat conservative, I guess. Ari Mirov says the NFL announced that Little Caesars is now the official pizza sponsor of the NFL, replacing Pizza Hut. Oh, I didn't know Pizza Hut was. I guess the last time I watched football, the NFL, it was still Papa John's. But I know he had a lot of problems in and of himself, and some of that was targeted for the fact of his political beliefs. The agreement offers Little Caesars a set of exclusive marketing rights designed to connect the brand with the NFL, its events, and fans. Sam says, Little Caesars is good pizza and doesn't deserve the hate it gets on here. I don't know that I've ever actually had Little Caesars. I don't think that I actually have. No NFL fan can say they're too good for Little Caesars. We've seen the teams you root for. If you don't eat Little Caesars pizza within 15 minutes of buying it, you might as well put some pepperoni on a Terry Bradshaw game worn jersey and eat it. Yeah, I hear it's real greasy, but I've never actually tried it. I'd be curious. I don't even know if there's a Little Caesars around me. There is. There's one in town. Where's Court Street? It was out on the west side of town somewhere. I think I know where this is. I can't be sure, but I think I know where this is. Yeah, I do know where this is. Alright. Maybe I'll have to try that on my diet cheat day. All right, and the last one that we'll do today is Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker is trending right now. The Cobb County Police Department told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution There's no record of GOP Senate candidate Herschel Walker working with them, but they were unable to confirm if he has the title of honorary deputy, according to MSDNC. Remember when that asteroid was plunging into the Earth's atmosphere and Herschel Walker and a scrappy team of outsiders took the space shuttle to destroy it? Herschel Walker, I invented the wheel, discovered penicillin. Yeah, that's John Cooper. Yeah, apparently, well, a lot of these are the simps saying, oh, well, the Herschel, who was it? Warnock will defeat Herschel Walker. Oh, we gotta throw the regular one out here. Question mark. So apparently he said that he was an honorary deputy. I don't know if that's true. I didn't hear that, but you know, we'll see what happens in November. It does sound like they're getting a little bit desperate, so you know, just looking down through this trend and seeing the wild stories they're making up about Herschel, it seems desperation. All right, and that's it. We're out of here for the day. I have to throw pants on and go running out the door, so we don't have a lot of time left, so let's get out of here, I think. Where's the outro music? So, well, thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat today. I know we got a little bit of a late start, but we had a little bit of a late finish too, so I'm going to head out of here for the day. We will see you back here tomorrow for more Contemporary. Game streams to be announced as work schedule allows, so continue to watch the Twitter for that or the Discord for that. F's in the chat for our friend Randy, because that is a terrible thing to see. Do hate to see that kind of thing, so definitely throw those F's up and pay respects for our friend and what's happening with him. Otherwise, come back and join us here tomorrow morning, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, for more Contemporary, more news and more headlines and more commentary as well. If you are lurking, get those last minute messages in so that I can come back and say thank you. Stick around if you're on Twitch because we are going rating, and we'll see you next time. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.